Pictures Alliance. In 3, 2, 1. They once were heroes, that much is true, until Syndrome brings them back out of the blue. Welcome to today's episode featuring The Incredibles and someone who's also very incredible, Jeff, my co-host. Welcome. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for that. You're pretty incredible yourself. I mean, I wish we had superpowers, but I mean, we're pretty incredible for normal people.
I'd say so too. And we'll get to that. I've got some questions. They don't really fit into discussion, but they're fun discussions about a superhero movie. But before we get into that, let's go over a quick summary of The Incredibles, released 2004, written and directed by Brad Bird, who did The Iron Giant, actually, before this. And his team from The Iron Giant was taken into Pixar and asked to do The Incredibles, basically. And it follows mid-suburban life of Bob Parr, aka Mr. Incredible. He once was a superhero, but was sued for stopping a man from committing suicide, and supers had to go into hiding. So he's living the life, going through kind of a midlife crisis, and then he gets this message that his secret identity is known by these people and they need help, so he goes to help them, and that kicks off a crazy adventure where he and his family of supers have to work together to bring down a childhood enemy of sorts. It's really kind of twisted, but it's great. And then, of course, in the end, it's a happy ending. They're triumphant. The world is saved. All that good stuff.
It is a great film for so many reasons, right? I mean, first of all, it's a Pixar film, and for the most part, Pixar films really hit it out of the park, right? I mean, they're so good. They have the moments that are for the kids, and then they have a bunch of moments that kind of they slide in there for adults that are watching the movie. The stories, you usually leave the theater with a handful of used tissues because you've been crying the entire time. Like you're just it's got all the feels.
It really does. And especially this one, because it's such a family film, I think. So I see a lot of my family in it. And I don't know, do you see that, Jeff? A lot of your family in it?
Absolutely. And I think especially as you get older, you start to see like there are some, like teenage stereotypes in there, and then little kid stereotypes, even parent stereotypes in the film. And I think that as you get older, it even becomes more apparent that these things existed in your childhood.
Oh, totally. And like you said, the shift from childhood to adulthood, what you connect with. Maybe when I was younger, I could have connected with Violet, but definitely on the Mrs. Incredible now. So I see here, your first thing, the film takes place in a fantasy world and gives it real world problems, and it does a fantastic job at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see this in a lot of different films, related to superheroes even, where you've got this person who is just a real person, but they're experiencing these supernatural powers, right? Some of these superhero movies that we watch don't ever touch on that very well. I mean, the first one that I think of is Superman, right? When you watch a Superman film, I know he's not a real person, so to speak. He's living in a real person's world, and the most that they touch on that in some of the films or comics even is that he's got an alter ego, right? This whole Clark Kent thing, but they focus on the superhero aspect of this character, and a lot of superhero movies do that. But The Incredibles takes it from the opposite angle, and it focuses on this family that is really trying, and it focuses for like half of the film or more on this family trying to be a real life family and live out with all of these things that they can't control, like their superpowers. Jack, for instance.
Oh my goodness, totally. And the job, Bob Parr's job, is so soul crushing to watch because I've been there. Have you been in that kind of a job, Jeff?
Absolutely. I mean, I think I think we all have, first jobs, second jobs, third jobs even.
Sometimes current jobs, you never know. But the fact, I think I never noticed this before, but poor Bob Parr, he's a big guy too, and he's in a cubicle that's taken up by that middle beam that runs through skyscrapers. He doesn't even have a full cubicle, for crying out loud.
Yeah, and to talk about that, I mean, there's a little bit of the Stanford Project in the beginning of this, right? So, and by that I mean there was an experiment that Stanford ran where they took 24 random people off the street that volunteered to do an experiment, and they randomly took 12 of those 24 people and made them prison guards, and the other 12 of them they made prisoners, and they built a fake prison, and it was just in like an office complex. They built this fake prison, and they had to end up stopping the experiment because the guards took the power too seriously and people were getting abused and all of this stuff. Now, how that draws into The Incredibles, I mean, is like this in my mind, where at the beginning Bob Parr is a superhero, right? And he is living in this world where he has these rules that he has to abide by, and his boss and these people are taking advantage of it, even though they're just little plebeians, right? They're just little people that, live and work normal life. They know that he can't do anything about it. They know that this stuff is going on. So, I mean, there's a little bit of that in there where they're abusing that power.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? And the whole idea that he kind of has to build this cage of invisible walls in order to keep everything together. Now, in that case, what are your thoughts on Bob not buying into the corporate life, right? Because we can assume he could have done things to become a star employee and work his way up to a managerial position. And we know the family's been moved countless times because Bob keeps breaking. He's not meant for this life, clearly. But do you think it would have made a difference even if he had tried for more?
I mean, man, once you taste that life of being a superhero, going back and doing that, I mean, oh, it's related to so my wife, right? She has celiac disease, so she has to eat gluten-free all the time. And she has tasted things that are gluten-free before she found this out. Nothing really tastes the same after that, right? You're going out there and you're eating a gluten-free donut, you're eating, all this stuff, and you're like, it's just not the real thing. And I think that kind of feels like that for Bob Parr, obviously on a much different scale, because this guy was saving people's lives. He was lifting cars, trains, buildings, all this stuff, and now he's stamping paperwork at his desk. So I don't think he could have ever done it. I mean, just with his personality and stuff. But if he had, I mean, we wouldn't have the film that we have today.
That's a great point. Now, let's juxtapose this to Mrs. Incredible. She seems to have adapted. Do you think, why do you think, like, how does that work? Any thoughts on that?
I think that she is a real family lady, right? She is really focused on the family. And if it means that she can't be what she wants to be, and this is something that we see in society, right? There are a lot of people that say, you know what? For the next 2 years, I'm going to take the next 2 years for myself. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do all this stuff because I know that once I have children, I won't be able to do those things anymore. So that's a comment that you hear often from families and things like that. Not that it can't happen, but because it's just much more difficult to make happen after you have kids and you're watching kids and you're responsible for, human beings after that point. So I think she has accepted that her first and foremost priority is to take care of these kids. Bob, on the other hand, I don't think has given it up yet. I think he believes he could do both.
Totally. And let me pose this question. Don't feel like you have to answer if it's a bit too touchy, but do you think that is kind of how it is when you have a classic relationship between a married man and woman, that the woman is more adaptable to changes like that and the guy rages as much as he can and only concedes when he has to?
Oh man, I don't know. I would say that there is definitely something to, I mean, I even feel this with my mom, right? My mom and I have a different type of connection than my dad and I have. And I think that's probably related to, the biology of it, the fact that your mom carries you for so long and has this. So maybe that relates in this way where, there's, for the most part, there's a different type of connection there in my mind, at least. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
It feels real. At least in my personal relationships. I know I'm definitely the one that's more adaptable, faster. And if we have to get insurance, fine, we'll get insurance. It's not a big deal. My other half throws the leaves and beats his chest a little bit before we
Kristen, I know what you're saying. I park in the same parking spot when I go to the grocery store because I refuse to park in any other spot. If there's someone parked in my spot, I wait for them to leave before I go in because that's the best spot. Let's be real.
Oh my goodness. So there we go, right? We have our habits and our things and things we're willing to deal with and other things we put our foot down and go, no, this is not happening. And I think this ties in greatly to the humor that you point out in this movie. Like, there is a lot of real humor in this. One of my favorite moments, and I think a lot of people, is when Mrs. Incredible is on the island and she's sneaking into the base and she sees herself in the mirror and she checks out her butt and her hips and kind of gives just a sad sigh, because we all get older and our bodies change.
That's what I'm talking about when I'm saying that there is a little bit of humor for adults in there. Like, kids don't get that. They get it that something's going on, but they don't fully understand it. I think it's also really funny. My favorite scene in the film is the whole Frozone interaction with his wife that you never see. I love that scene. I think it's so funny, but that's literally just for parents. I think it just shows how there's disputes and everything like that, and in these tiny little moments that are just hilarious. I think that is so funny.
Totally. And what about your relationship with your sister, right? Because I know when Violet and Dash are getting into it at the dinner table, I can't even count the number of times me and my siblings got into it like that at the dinner table. And Mom didn't have stretch powers, but it was definitely guys, calm down. You stop that. Now eat your food and we're going to have a good time.
Yeah, it's all real. And that's what we're talking about here, right? Real world problems for this superhero family. And everybody, what do you think, Kristen? I think everybody wishes that they were a superhero family. How cool would it be to have all these powers? If Mom needs to change a diaper, she could do it in a different room because she's got, elastic powers. Or, if you need to build a science fair project where you're doing something, your dad would be able to lift up a boulder. It's just cool.
Dude, right? But this brings up the question, because it's a quote that comes in twice, and I really want to know how you interpret this. Because you have the mom, and Dash is upset in the car because he got pulled from school. He got in trouble at school. And she says, "Everyone is special, Dash." And Dash responds, "That's just another way of saying no one is." And then Syndrome even says, "And when everyone's super, no one will be." So we have, and this is something I think I've heard, many people have heard growing up, that once everyone's special, no one will be. Do you honestly believe that?
No, I don't. I think that if everyone is super, people would be special by the way that they are super. And I think that plays into real life too. If everybody is special, let's be real. Kristen, you're really good at some things that I'm not really good at, and that makes you special. That's the kind of thing I think that they're trying to portray in this movie, where you don't have to be super to be special. You could be special in a different way. And it's cheesy, but it's such a good message for kids, right? It's awesome. If you're good at drawing and painting but not good at football, you're special. If you're good at football and you stink at drawing and painting, you're special. If you're bad at both of those like me, just play video games.
There's got to be something you're special at, right? Everybody has at least one thing, and you're totally right. It's such a good message, and not only for kids but for adults, because we all it's a joke to say that thing, but how many people actually take it to heart instead of realizing that there's a lot of nuance there. And just because you're bad at one thing doesn't mean you're bad at everything, and vice versa.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also plays into the fact it's something that I actually struggle with a lot in life is thinking like, what is the next thing? Like, what is going to be the next thing? Instead of realizing that what you have right now is pretty damn good. Like, you just realizing what you have now is really good. So, Mr. Incredible has that problem when he's got an awesome family that has superpowers, that has all this stuff, but he's looking for the next thing. Now, in this film, they eventually get the next thing and then they move forward, but still relishing the moment that you're living in is something that I always try to take a second and go, okay, I'm not looking for, what the next promotion is going to be, or when the next holiday is, or counting down the days basically until you're not around anymore. So like taking that time to kind of just relish in what's going on.
Yeah, right. Living in the moment, as it were. And there, like most things, there has to be that balance, because you do have to plan for the future a little bit, but you shouldn't get caught up. And again, Mrs. Incredible's line, "You're missing this, Bob. You're missing this. Your kids are growing up. You could be playing." He could have played football with Dash from the beginning, but we only see that scene after he's gotten this new job and feels this new joie de vivre, as it were, this new lust for life. And do you think that kind of ties into this midlife crisis that he's going through? Because I think Bob's clearly pretty depressed in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I think and you see the midlife crisis really come out when he starts, doing the superhero stuff again, and he buys the new car and he does all this. And that's the stereotype of the midlife crisis, right? That's something that we can't relate to yet, right? Because we haven't gotten to, I mean, I don't think we have.
Yeah, right.
Oh
What's
my God.
midlife anymore? It used to be 30, right?
Oh my God, is this podcast a midlife crisis?
This is
Oh
it.
my God. No, really though. So I mean, he's got this thing that's happening, and you hit the nail on the head, right? Mrs. Incredible is trying to tell him, live in the moment, try to be in this moment. And I wrote down here like longing for days past, but realizing that the future is what you make it. I mean, it really is that feeling, and that bleeds into the next thing, which is that this film, aside from all of the superhero icing on the cake that they've put in this, it feels honest and it feels real. And for an animated film, Pixar does that like crazy, right? Like, we're looking at toys here, it feels real. We're looking at fish that are talking to each other, it feels real. We're looking at superheroes that are living a normal life, it feels real and it feels good.
It does. They're people, because we're dealing with problems we can connect to. And I know we haven't watched Apocalypto for this yet, but there was something really, really good that Mel Gibson does at the beginning of the film, because we're following this Mesoamerican tribe in the middle of the jungle around the 1500s. How are we going to relate to that? He shows pranks they play on each other, dirty jokes the hunters throw at one another, the camaraderie, the family, the nagging mother-in-law, all these little things that most people through the human experience have come across. And I think Incredibles does that really freaking well. And that's how you get that real feeling. And I mean, here's a question kind of to that. Can you hide who you truly are? Can you be happy if you don't pursue, or if you don't get to be yourself? I think that's a pretty real question that this addresses.
For sure. I mean, I think it depends on your personality. Totally does. I know a lot of people out there that, wished that they could be actors, movie stars, wished that they could do this, they could do that. And, that was what they felt like, in college or in high school was their true calling. I mean, I was one of those people, right? And then you get dealt a different hand of cards depending on what you do, and it's how you take those cards and move forward. Now, clearly, Mrs. Incredible is the type of person that is going to take that hand and just make the most of it because it's her family, it's everything that she, it's her family, it's everything that she wanted in there. But it's different for Mr. Incredible, right? He doesn't like the hand that he's been dealt.
Yeah, and he kind of rages and rails against the machine. And I guess then my question to you, Jeff, is where do you draw the line? Right? Where do you personally draw the line with the hand you're dealt versus giving up on your dreams? Where do you meet the compromise, I guess?
Man, that is a really hard question because I am the type of person that is really trying to be make the best of what you're given and try to, you know, try to make it better. That's like the opposite statements in this conflicting, thought. You make the best of what you've got, but you've also got to try to make it better. I don't know. I guess that's the balance is for each different person. What do you think? I think it's possible to make that happen, but it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. And something my dad always told me growing up that I kind of took to heart is you have to know what you're willing to sacrifice. Because everything you go after in life takes sacrifices. And it doesn't have to be, crazy emotional sacrifices. But if you get a dog, you're going to need to go outside all the time. You're going to need to be able to pay the vet bills. You're going to need to be able to feed it and take care of it. And that's going to cut into some time you could have otherwise spent surfing if you like surfing instead. So you weigh the pros and cons, and is it actually worth you getting a dog? And that's kind of how, at least with choices, because sometimes you don't get a choice in what happens. And you don't get to be a 6'4" model because you only grew up to be 5'2" kind of a thing.
Exactly. And then realizing that some of those things are out of your control is a big part of it, right? If you want to be a football player and you do it in high school and then you go to college and you try really hard, but you just don't have the physique to do it, then it's not going to work out for you. So finding a way to live in that world is the part that you're trying with the hand that you're dealt to still be able to be a part of that world that you want to be a part of in the beginning.
Yeah, totally. So change the thing. I think that's where you get a personal sense of power from, right? Is you change the things that you can change, but you accept the things that you don't have any control over. As hard as that can be sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's hard. But man, if you're going to wait for that parking spot at the grocery store, you have control over that.
You do. You absolutely do. So you're going to take that and you're going to run with it. There's no reason not to in that point. It's not harming anyone else. It's not harming you. If anything, it's going to make you happier for the rest of the day. So going back to the car parking lot, do you go at a specific time of day to make sure you don't really have to wait for it?
No, but I do sometimes. So the spot that I park in, this is getting really minutia into the minutia here. Is that the right thing to say? But is far away from like the front of the grocery store. So people don't usually park there. It's got its own nice little shade. It's got its own personal walkway that I like to call the Jeff walkway to the grocery store. So like I like it. So it's not hard.
That. Okay.
It's not hard to get that spot. But I do sometimes think, you know what, I'm going to leave a couple minutes early in case I got to wait around for a few minutes. This is so stupid. As I'm saying, it's so stupid.
Oh, no. I used to do the same thing in high school because the parking lot was so small. As a senior, only seniors could park there, but not all of the seniors could park there. So I'd get to school 30 minutes earlier than I ever had to make sure I had my spot because I was not parking in the dirt lot, as the other one was called. No way. Okay. All right. Bringing it back. I have a question for you, Jeff. So we have the wonderful plane scene, well, wonderfully tense and very, very sad scene where Mr. Incredible thinks his family's died. They've been blown up in a plane and he's very depressed. and he's ready to actually kill somebody now. He is more angry, I think, than he's ever been in his life. And he tries to grab Syndrome, but Mirage pushes Syndrome out of the way. Do you think Mr. Incredible would have actually killed Syndrome if he had caught him instead of Mirage?
Yeah, I think that if it wasn't a kids movie, yeah. But that's probably why she pushes him away, right? But I do think that character would have made that decision in that moment, because I think it is a culmination of everything we've been talking about, where he finally realizes what is important to him, and it all blows up, no pun intended, in that moment. And so I think that if this was a rated R, film, and that moment was to happen, yes, I do think that character would have done it. What do you think?
I agree. And going off of that, do you think that would have changed your opinion of Mr. Incredible? Do you think he would have his character would have just completely changed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially in the moment that he would have realized that they didn't die, that they didn't go away. So I think that's an important thing to think about too.
Yeah, totally. And then let's talk about the detail of the film, because Kyle Ferguson tweeted the detail, and then he posted the picture of Mr. Incredible's wall of memorabilia. So the detail in the film, and even behind the scenes, they're saying that the crew was challenged to make this the most detailed Pixar film yet. How do you think that plays into everything?
Yeah, I'll talk about this a little more when we talk about if the movie stands the test of time. But I do think that they push the envelope with every film that they do. They push it and push it and push it. So that is the world of animated film right now, is how realistic can we make it? How good can we make it look? And I think that sometimes this is hard to say, because I feel like sometimes they sacrifice story, but most of the time they don't, right?
Yeah.
I think that it plays all into just creating the highest quality animated film that they can. For the most part, they hit the mark.
Yeah, totally. And I think something, so we get the detail with the background and the visuals, and then the detail with the story. And one of my little favorite things, there are two parts. One is they do a great job showing how Mr. Incredible breaks into the compound versus how Mrs. Incredible breaks into a compound. Mr. Incredible's all strength and throwing stuff, and he doesn't hide the bodies, but Mrs. Incredible is all his stealth and all that good stuff. And then this wonderful moment where Helen's on the island with the kids, and before she takes off, she talks to them about their Saturday morning cartoons and how no one dies in those. But that's not this. They will kill you, and you have to be able to stand your ground and don't give them the chance. And after that moment, we start to see henchmen die. No one, as far as we can tell, dies up to that point.
Something I didn't even notice, right? And how crazy is that to think about? What a great thought. I mean, what a crazy moment to have with your kids, right? I mean, did you ever have a conversation with your parents about, life in general and how it comes to end for everybody? I mean, I can't remember that moment, but I would imagine that having that as a parent and having to talk to your kids, whether they're, 40, 30, whatever it is, there's got to be a moment where you come to this realization. I mean, I personally remember I had a conversation with my dad probably about 5 or 6 years ago, where he gave me an envelope and he was talking to me about how in this envelope was everything that needs to happen when he passes away, right? And he's like, it's nothing to be worried about. We just met with the lawyers, we talked about this stuff, and we figured it all out, and you're just going to put this in your home safe and just keep it until something happens that one day, right? That's like a mind-blowing moment where we trick ourselves that, nothing bad's ever going to happen to us, and unfortunately some of those things do come to pass, and so it's crazy to think about that they put that level of depth into this conversation with these kids, and kids are watching this movie.
Yeah, it was the first day of 5th grade, and we had this teacher, our gifted math teacher. amazing woman. She rode a Harley Davidson motorcycle. She kept piranha in the class. She had a white cockatoo that would scream, "Hello, Albert, hello, Albert," in the middle of class. He was such a sweetie. And she was riding to school that morning, and a high schooler who was driving to her senior first day hit her at an intersection, and she died. So that's my earliest recollection of having to have any kind of death talk. And my parents didn't sugarcoat it. There was no, it's just, that's what happens. And the biggest moral they gave me from that is that's why you have to treat every moment so precious, is because you simply don't know. Here one day, gone the next. Or as the Aesop fable, hair one day, gone the next, or something.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, it might seem silly to someone listening to this, thinking about it, but that's the moment that happens in The Incredibles, right? I mean, and it all back to when she says, "Bob, you're missing this. Like, you're missing what's happening right now, and you don't know what's going to happen next." So I think there's definitely, I mean, I even feel like I need to remind myself that more often, all the time. You don't know. I could walk out and get hit by a car right now. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want to know the secret, country music. They are always singing about how the next day could be your last. So enjoy it while you have it. That's why I love it. That's probably not the whole reason I like country music, but you know.
That is funny.
It's in, you know, a very melodramatic way to remember that. All right, and then we had Trappy Jenkins write in with a really cool thought. It's basically The Watchmen meets Fantastic Four, and it does both movies better than any live-action adaptation could. Incredibles predicted the rise of the angry nerd fanboy and the damage they could do if left unchecked.
Really, though? I mean, yeah, I don't. This is an interesting thought, right? Because there's a lot baked into this, and I wouldn't say that I was definitely a nerd fanboy, right? I mean, going through all school and stuff like that, and it's hard to feel included, and I was bullied and all of this stuff, and you know, it made me smarter. So this is just a really random story. I was in grade school, and I remember playing Pokemon on my Game Boy, and people were making fun of me, right? And so they would hit me on the head on the bus. This is all true. Hard. And being like this, you know, little Irish tempered guy, I would yell back at them. Like, I would yell at them, "Stop hitting me, stop hitting me." And then they would all laugh, and then they would hit me again and just keep hitting me in the head, right? So one day I was like, you know what I'm going to do today? I'm not going to react. I'm going to let them hit me and not react. And they got bored. And I mean, that's a trope, right? Just don't react and they'll stop. No, really though, it works. Just don't react and it worked. So, I mean, everybody deals with it in different ways. And some people have this, you know, just so extreme, like we see in Syndrome, obviously in this, you know, fantasy story, fictional story, and it just gets blown out of proportion. But yeah, this is a real thing.
Yeah, and we even see, I think Twitter is kind of a nest, if you will, of an interesting collection of people that like to bully and people that like to react to the bullying. And then just other people that are going on trying to be happy, trying to be like, look, we don't have to bully anybody. We don't have to react to the bullies. Just live your life, bro. It's okay if you meet your hero and they're not who you think they were. And maybe that's a problem, right? Maybe there's this weird disconnect between who people think they see versus how those people actually are.
Absolutely. I know some people that work in the entertainment industry, and you'll go in and you'll be like, "Oh, I love so-and-so. They are so funny. They do so much. They do these things for the community, all this stuff." And then somebody will say, "Oh, no, you don't." they're a really mean person on the back end. Like, you don't really know this person until you actually meet them. They're a total snob, all this stuff. And you're just like, I don't know what to do in that situation. Do you continue to like that person, or by the hearsay, do you stop liking that person? All this stuff. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, dude, what is the right choice? I mean, maybe the right choice is to simply keep whatever opinion you had until you actually maybe meet them. I don't know, right? Because like you said, it's hearsay. Who knows if they're actually, or maybe they were just having a bad day.
Totally. And back to your other point, I actually I don't want to say feel bad, but I think it's a very difficult time for kids to grow up with social media that's so active right now. I mean, we were lucky enough that we were, you know, I was a member of Facebook when Facebook was college only kids,
Yes.
right? And that was cool. Like, you had this all you need, your
Remember
college
the
only.
groups?
Yeah. And like, you could only get Facebook if you were in college, and that was cool. Like, because now nobody has to answer in person for things that they say on social media. And there's part of that that's good, because people are able to say things that they're actually thinking, and they don't have to be afraid about what's going to happen. But then when that becomes abused, right, and there's people out there that are just hateful to other people, and they don't have to answer for it because they're not actually there, that's got to be really hard for kids to deal with. Because yeah, a kid hit me on the bus, and if I wanted to, I could have gone to the principal and said, that kid right there was mean to me and hit me and hurt me. But right now, you know, you can go to a principal and say, this guy is mean to me on social media, but that kid might not even live in the same country as you or whatever. You know, it's crazy. So there's not these personal connections when it comes to things anymore. And now I just sound like an old man on a soapbox, but I'm really saying that I walked 15 miles uphill
barefoot. Okay, so here's this. What are your thoughts then on the block features? Like, if someone's mean to you on social media, just close your eyes. Just walk away, and then it's not there, right? Or do you think our society is so ingrained with social media that you can't walk away, but you definitely should prune out the weeds every so often?
Oh yeah, I think it's each person's preference. If you can't handle it, definitely get rid of it. I think that if you can't handle it, and you can realize that, I mean, our show previously, right, Heroes Forge, that we did for years, everybody has an opinion about what you're doing and what you're creating. And I saw a really, really great tweet the other day that was talking about how being creative all the time is really hard. And people don't realize that, right? I mean, you're out there and you are performing, creating, being, you know, an artist in a whole bunch of different ways. And people think, oh, you play video games for a living? Like, that must be really easy. No, it's not. Like, some of these, if you're doing it right, it's hard. It's hard stuff. So when people start shitting all over it, it makes it difficult, right? I mean, it makes it hard. And as you know, I took some of those comments hard, and I was like, well, we got to completely change the way that we're doing this off of one person's opinion. No, like, and you did a really great job always of reining me back in and being like, you know what, let's not overreact here. Let's just, you know, let people have their opinions. But it's hard, and you know, growing up is tough, especially if you have superpowers.
Yeah, and that's a great thing too, right? Because there's a very important I just saw chat. Jimmers. All right. There we go, buddy. All right. Sorry, I'm coming back into the show. Speaking of trolls on Twitch, someone shows up in your chat and talks about how they want to do things. You just gotta laugh it off and move on. But going back to the opinions and criticisms, that's probably one of the most important things. And this can tie into The Incredibles too, right? Because it's a piece of art and you've got a lot of different voices coming at you. What should you change? What should you not change? There was a scene where Jack was going to turn into goo in Syndrome's hands as Syndrome was taking the baby there at the final scene. And it was something that Brad Bird, the director, really, really, really wanted to happen. But the animation side fought for months to go, look, we can't do this with the budget and the time frame. Wow, we can't do it. So it's that balance of what are opinions and who are people that are actually giving legitimate critiques that can be applied to make something better, rather than just somebody, you know, they liked it or they didn't like it.
Yeah. I mean, and talking about what it takes to go into the animation of films like this, I know a guy that was one of the animators for Moana, and he was part of a team of something crazy. I want to say like 40 people, and their job was to literally animate the water. Like that's what they did.
No way.
They just drew water for years, right, to make Moana happen. So I can see the side of this, the animation team is saying, guys, we can't. Like you just can't do it. And that's a skill that I will never be able to. I can't draw stick figures. I can't draw anything.
Wait, you can't draw stick figures?
No. I mean, I can, but they're bad. Like I could draw a stick figure just standing there, but I can't draw a stick figure doing anything. You know what I'm saying? Like throwing a football or, you know, doing anything. I can't do it.
Gotcha, but you can draw the stick.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm bringing up football so much today.
Well, Dash plays football with his dad, which is a great foreshadowing of when they're throwing around the remote at the end of the movie. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's very well thought out.
And I think before we go to some fun questions here, you have this great IGN look back review from Jonathan Dornbrush of IGN. Did you want to take it or would you like me to read it?
Yeah, I'll read it. So I mean, there's tons of stuff. If you go in, the first thing I usually do when I research the film that we're talking about is to look at what other people like about it, to see if my opinions are in line with a lot of what other people are thinking about the film. And I think that Jonathan hits the mark on IGN with this quote. So he says, "And trying to find yourself in this world, whether it's one filled with people who can turn invisible or shoot ice from their hands, or one less superpowered than ours, is a universal struggle. We can reckon with our identity, who we are, can be, and should be based on what society, family, and our own mind tells us. The Incredibles shows us that this journey can happen at any point in our lives and may be still ongoing years after we think it's all figured out." I mean, it's a great way of summing up what the feels are of this film.
Right, that life isn't over until it's over, and life is pretty much what you make it in the end.
Yeah, and yeah, it goes back to everything we've been talking about, right? I mean, make them.
Yeah, own it. Be the best person that you can be with what you've been given. All right, well, moving into that, I have some fun questions for you, Jeff. Based on this film, of course, superhero, fun stuff. Which character do you most relate to, first of all?
I think I relate to, believe it or not, Mrs. Incredible the most.
Really?
Like, yeah, I think that I am the person that is, you know, this is what we've got, and at least I try, because you can see that she's struggling with that too. I mean, if you've seen Incredibles 2, you know what's up. But in Incredibles 1, she's struggling with it, but she's dealing with it. And that's kind of what I do. I think that's kind of like a personality trait of mine. Like, yeah. No, I know my ankle's broken, but I got to get to the grocery store.
Yeah, the family's falling apart. But it's okay. We're fine. It's all good. No, everyone's still alive. We're all good here.
What about you, Kristen? Who do you relate to?
This is incredible, hands down. And speaking of, I'm sidetracking to Incredibles 2 here really quickly. But did you see it, Jeff?
I did, yes.
The motel pool scene. Did that get you? Because I definitely. Okay.
It did. Yeah, if you haven't seen the second one, it's real good. It turned out to be really, really fun movie.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and the fight scenes, I think they just blew it out of the water.
Absolutely.
All right, so what would your superhero power be?
I mean, ah, it's a tie between being invisible and mind reading.
Ooh, now mind reading you could turn on and off, or just you hear it all the time?
I would, oh, you'd want to turn it on and off, right? I mean, because then you'd be like in a job interview and you'd get that.
That's a good point.
What about
so
you?
You would use your superhero power to get really good jobs.
That's right. And then I would become an esports star because I would know what my opponent was doing one step before they did.
Oh, that I like it. I like it.
Or I could just become invisible and unplug their mouse.
What would you call yourself?
I would call myself, for a mind reader, I would be called I don't know. I don't know. I have no idea. What were you thinking your superhero powers would be?
I've always liked fire, so being able to like summon fire and shoot fire. And then I'd just probably straight up call myself Princess Azula, and I'd pretend to be insane.
That's great. I love it. But you're not actually insane?
No, I'm not actually insane, but everyone would expect me to be insane because I'm clearly ripping off of a cartoon character.
Are you acting insane so that people are afraid of you?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I would act insane so that people underestimate my capabilities. I love that. Love it.
Amazing.
And then it's much easier to beat them because they let their guard down.
Have you ever taken the Harry Potter test? Are you a Slytherin?
Oh, it's been ages. When I did, I was always Gryffindor.
Oh, good for you. I'm a Slytherin.
But nowadays I'm probably with you. I never Hufflepuff. Never Hufflepuff.
That's a very Slytherin thing to say.
Exactly. All right, and who would you want your arch villain to be?
I would want it to be somebody that I don't know. I mean, do you think Captain Planet is cool?
Oh my God, I had such a crush on him when I was a little, because I was like 5 when his voice actor had such a cute voice. So yes, I loved Captain Planet. I watched it all the time.
Kristen, that takes a lot of courage to say that you had a crush on Captain Planet.
This is 5-year-old Kristen. I had crushes on things since I was 1.
So I was gonna say that I would want my villain that, would be somebody like, that's trying to destroy the planet, or, maybe somebody that feeds junk food to people so that they get fat and ugly. And like, that was my job because, but I'm going with the esports motif here. I want my villain to be like the best of the best esports player, like the Yankees of the esports. And, I just happen to have mind reading powers. I can think one step ahead where they are. So I'm really saving the esports community, not the world.
Dude, right? And then it drives them insane or something. So they make it their life goal to take you down. I don't know how he cheated.
That's right.
But he
You
cheated.
never know.
And where would your base be? Would you want to be in a city, on an island, in a volcano?
No, as you know, Tony Stark is one of my favorite superheroes. So I want to be the very best, like no one ever was. And I want to have a full-on Stark Tower, but it will be Video Game Man's tower instead.
I like it. And would it be in New York or would you have it somewhere else?
I'd have multiple. So I'd have one in New York, Canada. I love Canada. I'd have one in Japan. I'd be a global superpower.
Oh, dude. Well, as an esports star, that makes sense. You'd need one in Russia too. They love MMOPG or the MOBAs.
What about you?
Oh, geez. Okay, so arch villain, it would have to be some. I'd want it to be a comedy because I'd want this person to pretend to be even more inept than I am. And the base, My car. It would be my car. Just so I could get to where I need to. And I love the idea of a transforming car, and then you got all these cool little gadgets. I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, I'd like to be the superhero that has all the superpowers and has all the bases. Like, you drive your transforming car to your underground bat cave, but then you take the elevator to your Tony Stark tower, which has a portal that takes you to the separate planet that allows you to mine this material that gives you another spaceship. Like, I want it all.
Dude, and then on the spaceship you have Cerebral, and then you attach yourself and you beat all of the gamers at once. And that's sweet esports money.
That's right. I can actually take over whatever esports team I want to take over, and then I can, using this technology, make it so that all the brackets win, and then Biff Tannen comes in and starts betting on all of the games that I'm playing and make $1 bazillion.
Oh, and then you high five, and that's the end of the movie. It was amazing.
Oh no, am I a villain? I might be a villain.
Well, you eventually go too far, and then you realize you're a villain, and you become a good guy. So from a certain point of view, you might be a villain. All right, and if you like The Incredibles, I suggest to you Avatar: The Last Airbender, because it is a cartoon. It is made for kids, but it's real rather than ridiculous. It's got some very, very great fight choreography, but it deals with death, with war, with complicated teenage hormonal romances. It deals with accepting parents who may not like you, which I think is a pretty important thing. And then also The Watchmen. It's a comic. Again, a comic which you wouldn't think is made for adults, but it is graphic novel with a capital N on novel. I mean, everything rhymes. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it is. I mean, Avatar and The Watchmen are just real good, especially related to this. I mean, it's real. I wrote down Spider-Man: Homecoming, because the newest Spider-Man film has that feel that you have in The Incredibles, right? This is just a kid. He does figure out that, he's got Spidey powers, and, it's not as silly as him shooting bionic webs, but like he needs the help of other people to make himself a superhero. I think it's real cool, and dealing with it, and it has a lot of really great adult humor inside of there too. So Spider-Man: Homecoming is good. And then I wrote down Finding Nemo, because which is my favorite Pixar film. I think that it has that same find yourself moment, and I think a lot of Pixar movies do have that, but I think it does it really well. And it's also a Pixar film, which The Incredibles, I mean, is one of the best. So Finding Nemo's up there too. Those are my suggestions.
I love it. And will The Incredibles stand the test of time, Jeff?
I say the themes, absolutely. The performances, absolutely. The story is great and funny, and the script is awesome. But I'm sad to say that I think, like we talked about before, that animated films do have a lifespan, and that's due to the technology development that these days. Why do we see these sequels? And when we see the sequels and we go back and we watch the original films, are they as good as they were before? I mean, if you've watched the original Toy Story lately and you go and you watch it, I mean, it's tough to watch because of the look. It's tough to watch because it's not Toy Story 3. It's not even Toy Story 2. It doesn't have that feel. And I think that as this generation, we are spoiled with this because of technology booming right now. It's booming like crazy. And you go and you watch Moana and you watch Frozen, and then you go back and you watch The Incredibles, and you're like, oh, this doesn't look as good as I thought it looked. And that kind of overshadows the entire film. So I think that from a point of view of how do I make an amazing animated film that touches people and has a great storyline and a message to tell people? Yes. As far as in 10 years, will kids be watching this? I don't think so.
Yeah. So going off of that, how long do you think it'll take for people not to care? Right? Because old black and white movies, sure, they're a little corny, but they're not bad. I mean, if you go back and watch Singin' in the Rain, it's still a great movie for all of its oddities of the time. So how many generations do you think have to pass before maybe Incredibles is accepted with as much love and reverence, and the oddities are just, that's how it was back then?
Yeah, I think that it's not nearly as many. It won't last as long as that, only because, okay, so take for example, we talked about The Matrix in our first episode,
Yes.
and how that will, and we both agreed that that will live on forever for a bunch of different reasons. That film doesn't have a lot of computer generated graphics. A lot of that is done real, like live action graphics and things like that. Even if you go back and you watch the Hobbit films, or not the Hobbit, the Lord of the Rings films, some of the scenes are tough to watch because the CGI has aged so much, right? And that is where I'm drawing this conclusion with The Incredibles, because the entire film is hand drawn. People don't keep copies of the original Mickey Mouse cartoons in their house nowadays. You know, they don't watch those types of things. So I think that it's our generation. I think our kids won't see this movie unless we give it to them.
We sit them down and we make them watch it. Now, this is what we liked back in the day.
Right, yeah. And I think that that's why Disney Pixar does all of these sequels. They're insanity, right? I mean, do we need Toy Story 4? No. The story wrapped up perfectly. But kids aren't going to go back and watch 1, 2, 3 unless the parents say, let's watch 1, 2, 3. The kids are going to go to the theater and see Toy Story 4, and the parents are going to know this is going to be a quality story with characters that I love. I mean, it's a really good business model, right? Incredibles came out before we could have kids, or before we were thinking of having kids. So now that we have kids, we go, oh, we need to go see Incredibles too, because I want to see that and the kids are going to like it. So that's my thought, my long-winded thought. Sorry.
That was great. No, I really like that, and I don't think you're wrong. As sad as it is to say that, yeah, it just breaks my heart to have that realization, but such is how it is sometimes. All right, well, moving on to the next up. What are we watching next, Jeff?
The Departed. And you can find The Departed on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Please watch it. It's great. It's a great film. I can't wait to talk about it with you, Kristen. And you can find it again on Netflix or iTunes or any of your pay to rent movie services. But if you have a Netflix subscription, it's on there now.
Heck yes! And if you'd like to share your thoughts and maybe be featured in the mailbag, send us your favorite part or parts of The Departed. Email us at talkingpicturesalliance@gmail.com or tweet us at TPAcast. Jeff, where can people find you?
You can find me right here on Talking Pictures Alliance. We show every other Sunday. And if you want to follow me on at Mr. Jeff Reynolds.
Woo! And if you're looking for me, I am _Kristen Ashton _ Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. And as for this show, you can find us right here on twitch.tv/Dream Destroyer every other Sunday for movie madness. And we'll be back July 29th with Departed? I need to practice The Departed. Practice the Boston accent. And if you'd like to support this podcast, head on over to patreon.com/TPAcast. Any other final words, Jeff?
That was amazing!